Good morning. Welcome to Living with S. I'm your host, Sharon Mundia. And as always, I know I always say this, but I'm just going to remind you that you can also call me S. Now, for today, we're talking about insurance. It's not a topic that we often hear about or even often have conversations about with our friends and our loved ones. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. And that's why we're having the conversation today. And our guest is Alex Rurie, who is about to share with us his 18-year experience in this field, because if ever there was a time to ask an expert, it's going to be today. We often don't really know much about the topic, but before we get into that, I'd love for you guys to watch a feature. We went to the streets and we asked you guys what you thought about insurance and if you even have insurance. Take a look.
Insurance is important because it helps cover such bills such as the medical bills, if you have spoiled cars, something of the sort. It can help cover so that, because you can find like someone you do not have money to pay at that instant, and in real sense you need to do whatever you want, and you have the insurance, or you are in the insurance company, so it will be of benefit
to cover any eventualities that are unexpected.
I don't think insurance is important because you have to pay like every month and you don't get sick every month, so I don't think it's important. And again, they take so much money from you and you won't like get sick every month or every week. So I think the money they take from you is too much.
Insurance is very important to everybody because, for example, if you have a property, maybe and you have insured that property, maybe there is accident. For example, if there is a fire, or the company they will pay you the loss that you have lost. They will pay you everything.
I think insurance is important because it helps you to prepare for life. It helps you to plan. So even if it's not necessarily for the money you'll get at the end of it, it's more to help you plan for your life and help you do something about your life, so that you don't feel like you're living haphazardly. And I feel like many of us fear, and so we live haphazardly, but it kind of gives you something to do about your life and how it's going to turn out.
I've insured my car, and I also have a medical insurance cover. I would urge people to continue to insure, and I'm sure now in the market they are quite affordable covers that people can go for.
Okay, as you can see, we have a lot to learn in today's session. Once again, we have Alex Rurie, who is the CEO of Moran Capital Management. And he gets to share with us a little bit about insurance. What is it? But even outside of what is it? What are the different aspects of it that we don't often hear about? The fine lines that we forget and we don't stop to ask the questions. But as usual, I'm going to take a minute to ask you guys and invite you to have the conversation with us online. We are on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. That's Living with S. Or you can also SMS us. The line should be on your screens right now. But now time to jump into the topic. Morning, Alex.
Morning.
How are you feeling today?
Very good.
Are you ready? I know you've got 18 years of experience under your belt, but are you still ready to dive into the topic of insurance from a very basic level?
Now that's the interesting part, keeping it basic, but we'll try.
I know, just try and like unpack, because we're trying to start as if we're beginners. Because again, it's a topic that even as I was asking people around me, like, how much do you know about insurance? People are like, car insurance, health insurance. That's pretty much it, and there's not much about it that we try and dive into. So maybe we can even start from there. What are the types of insurance that are out there?
All right, there are basically two types, two areas. One which is to do with what most people know about because the law tells you about it and requires you to have it, which is the general insurance. That's why you talk about the car insurance, you talk about the properties. There's a lot of knowledge around that because the law requires you to have it.
Right.
But then there's the other side of insurance, which is your life insurance, which is more to do with protecting, your own life and the benefits you think you should be able to get through working through your life. And that life insurance is the other side. So there's a general insurance, which is more to do with property and assets.
Okay.
And then there's a life insurance to do with your individual and your life. And what your aspirations are all about. So those are the two main classes, the general and the life insurance.
Life insurance. So what falls under general? I know there's, say, car insurance you just talked about. And I'm guessing here's where you'd even have, I don't know the right term for it, but is it house insurance or to cover you from theft or any damage?
Yes.
Is that where that falls? And what else falls under this?
Okay, so you have insurance in general lines, which cover what you've said is property. So you have domestic insurance, which covers your house, and then you have buildings within the domestic environment, which is the brick and mortar, and then there's the contents in your house. So those are really within the property side.
Okay.
And the property side, you can then go from individual property to commercial property, where you have the business property or the private property.
I see.
So all these are spaces you can take in, and you can either be insuring the brick and mortar of it, you can insure the contents in the business, or what the business does. So
Okay.
for example, maybe you're a baker, so you'll also be insuring yourself against the liability of maybe some guy had your nice cake and got sick. So you've got to insure that as public liability as well within your property.
Right, because I have seen some stories come up in the past, few years of people who come into your restaurant, buy a burger. Like, I've heard some really crazy stories. So this is like one of them. So they came into the restaurant, they bought a burger, they went home with it, put it in the car and left it there, and then decided to eat it the next day after it's been sitting there for 24 hours in the heat and all that.
Yeah.
Ate it, got sick, and then sued the company.
Yes.
So this is where that falls.
Yes, that's your public liability.
Oh,
So
so Alex, actually, would you know if this is something that a lot of companies get insurance for, or is it one of those that they often skip over?
as a proprietor, you should have it, because the purpose of insurance is really protecting what you're building in your business. So if you yourself don't get it, it will be detrimental to the profitability of your business, because when people get sick and then you have to pay to come out of your own pocket if there is a legal situation you get into. But if the insurance comes in and is able to verify that you are taking all the measures which are correct, and that even if you are then liable, you don't have to take the cost of it, the insurance company would. But many people don't, because there is the perception that maybe it's expensive.
Yeah, or maybe it'll never happen, which
Yeah.
is why a lot of people don't take insurance seriously, because they
yes,
assume
yes,
that
yes.
tragedy or accidents will not happen
not
to
for me.
I'm good, I'm covered. So they often overlook it.
Yeah.
Actually, this isn't even where I was hoping to go with the
All right.
discussion, the first section, but it's so interesting, and it's got me thinking. So last week we had Kelly Murungi here talking to us about startups.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talked about is how we can see that there's an influx of young entrepreneurs coming in on Instagram and on Facebook and setting up shops, whether it's hair or makeup or jewelry and accessories. And I just wanted to ask, how important is it for those entrepreneurs to have this insurance, and is it expensive?
Well, it's very important. As a business person, and I'm a business person as well, I have to protect what I'm working for. And in that way, I have to be sure that not only am I protecting what I'm working for, but I'm also protecting my clients. It's important that people, when you talk about customer service, one of the customer services is to ensure that if you provide a service and by mistake it affects your customer, you should be able to at least help out, or there should be a mechanism to help the client recover. I'll give you an example. you went to a restaurant, and I just use a restaurant because I see them in a lot of those challenges, and you swallowed some unholy animal for all
Okay.
you know. Something
Yeah.
crawled into the food.
Okay.
This is something that, could happen. But then if it happens, who should be blamed? Of course, you did everything. You washed the vegetables and you did everything you did.
right.
But then the client still got sick. So the client ends up in hospital. Instead of saying, no, it's not me, we did everything possible, just say, you know what, we are very sorry it happened,
Yeah.
but we'll step in, we'll take care of it. There's some cover to take care of that. That would mean your clients know that you're a responsible institution. So you should take it, even though you're doing things online. Maybe deliveries fail or something happens.
Or maybe even maybe
Yeah.
you sell a pair of earrings and it has the client has an allergic reaction
Exactly.
to them.
So all these things are, you as a business person should not be hustling too much
Yeah.
to take care of such things. There are institutions that takes care of that kind
Okay.
of risk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now, say for instance, you are a young male or female who's just started working. I'm sure we've got a lot of you guys watching right now and are wondering how, if I was to start on, if I was to take on an insurance policy, which are the first, let's say, 3 that you would advise us to take? And not just, like car insurance, because maybe you do have a car, maybe you don't, but let's take that out because the government requires you have that one. But what
Yeah.
are the 3 other insurance that you would say, stop, this is what you need to go for?
I think that's a fantastic question because if I was a girl and I was dating a guy, I would ask him that very same question.
What?
I would ask him that very same question. Do you have some insurance on you? Because
Wait, but that could make you look dodgy, Alex.
No.
Yeah, especially if you're like, so do you have life insurance? What's
No, you see, the question you asked is, do you have life insurance? Now that
which
is,
makes you look dodgy. I hear you.
But
okay.
if I asked you, do you ever take out insurance?
Yeah.
It's, of course, somebody could think, why are you asking me? But in a way, it will tell me about your characteristics.
That's true.
You're protecting yourself. You have value in yourself. You see, if you told me, yes, I do have some insurance, what have you taken? I do have some medical insurance, for example, because medical is one of the areas that can really wipe out your savings. So I do have it. I do try to take care of myself and what I'm working for. So I have medical insurance. Do you have personal accident within that space? Because if you're an active guy, right? So it's likely you'll end up jumping or doing something in the gym or otherwise going for a nice sport and you're a racing driver. You had an accident. Do you have the ability to take care of yourself?
Sorry, Alex, isn't that health insurance?
It is within health insurance.
Okay.
So you'll take your health insurance. Do you have it? And there are affordable programs to do that you can pay monthly that are really affordable out there.
Okay. But you called it something else. You said
Medical insurance.
Oh,
so
okay,
within the
personal.
medical
Right,
insurance,
yeah.
you have a personal accident
Okay, right.
insurance. There are
Okay.
people who take it for just being hospitalized, but there are other spaces where you have a personal accident insurance.
Okay.
You can also, at the very least, because one, you're checking your health. The other one is you're just checking you have an endowment, an investment that you do over time. It's very affordable. You could be putting away 2,000 shillings a month, which promises to at least give you something in the future. It just shows me that you have the right foundation. You are thinking a bit far. Your vision is cast out somewhere. And probably on the third party, if you told me you have a business and you said, yeah, I do take some insurance on my business, or you do avoiding the motor insurance space, just having things that relate to your person, that I have taken care of that. I'm very keen to see that, maybe you're having a drink with your boys and then something happened to you. Do we then move from there to a Harambe immediately? Because
Right.
you have no way of taking care of yourself
Yes.
in case of a shock. If you're employed, I would ask you, do you have a redundancy policy? Insurance which covers the event that I lose my job.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait a sec. There's insurance for a redundancy policy.
Yes.
Which is insurance for if you suddenly lose your job.
Yeah, if you get cut off, it's not your option. You didn't hand over, I resign.
Okay.
So in the event there is a restructuring in the company and you get restructured
Right.
out,
Yeah.
of course there is a policy that can kick in to give you a salary for a period. Yeah, this is what I'm
Wow.
saying. You know, so why don't you just have it? It's affordable.
That's really interesting, and it makes me wonder if that could almost replace an emergency fund. In our first week on Living with Us, we had Rena Hicks telling us how important it is to have an emergency fund. If you guys were watching, which I hope that you were, I hope you've started that fund now. But she did say that it's important that you have at least 6 months or so
Yes.
of your monthly costs
Expenses,
put
yeah.
aside.
Yes.
So can this redundancy policy sort of take care of that?
Yes, actually in insurance term you'll find it being called the income replacement policy. So these options exist. So within your emergency fund, this is a strategy you could also have to cover the possibility of that happening. And being that we are a very dynamic economy and businesses keep changing, you know, companies do change. And before you find another job, this is an option that you could survive on. And that's why I'm saying, you'd want to interview and just see how prepared is somebody.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that, and
Yeah.
it like you said, it tells you a little bit about their character and where their mind is at.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so say for instance now you think, okay, I do want to look into insurance. Maybe it's even the redundancy policy that you were talking about. What are the key things to look out for when you're shopping for insurance?
The key foundations are, especially in the event that it actually happens, is that the insurer can actually pay out your claim. So the claims experience of that company that you're looking for is very important.
Where do you find the claims experience? Is it online or?
Yes, like if you go to the IRA, Insurance Regulatory Authority, they will normally tell you who won the claims payout experience, which is the company which are the top ranked companies, and even when you're talking to your advisor, your insurance advisor, you should tell them what you want. Primarily, this is what I care about: the ease of processing, the ease of getting my claims paid out, the ease of paying my premiums, and I want information that is very clear. I want details that are very clear so that I know exactly what I'm getting into. So I would be looking at the insurance, the stability of the company itself. So those are things that I don't want to start putting my money in a company and it goes down. Then
Right.
obviously I'm left open.
Right.
So that's some of the fundamental details I'd be looking at.
Yeah, and I like that you didn't just go straight to cost, because that's the first thing that a lot of us are guilty of. We start to think, oh, that one's 8,000, that one's 2,500. I'm going to go for that one. But it's what you've just pointed out is that there's a lot in the fine print that we
Yes.
often overlook and that we need to pause and look at.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Things like waiting periods and those kind of things, and just how much coverage you're going to get for your
Right.
cash. There are
Yeah.
some different companies will give different coverage.
Okay.
So try and ask 4 or 5 companies and then go through the details. Don't be in a hurry. Look at
And
it.
do your work.
Do your homework.
Okay.
Do your homework.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Say, for instance, you wanted to have 100,000 every month as your emergency fund. Should you get fired, what would the amounts that you would be expected to pay? What range would that look like?
Okay, so first it would be the payment runs for about 9 months or so.
Okay.
So that you do get yourself back in a job, not just sitting on the on
Right.
the income.
Yeah.
So there would be a range normally of the premiums rating from about 8% or so. So you'd be paying ordinarily just about 5,000 or so. Just
5,000.
round about that range.
Okay.
But then the measures they need to check, the conditions they need to check, depending on where you are on the organization, which organization are you in, just to see are you on a, how long have you been working, just to see the elements of is this something likely to happen or not?
Yeah.
So if it's somebody who's been in a company for a while, very stable, then the risk of them losing the job is probably lower, so the premium would be lower.
Oh, I
If
see.
your risk is higher, the organization is in a very volatile industry, then that is something that would put your premium up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So maybe now we could start with like some basic terms. I've heard you say premium, and I've got a couple of other words here that I want you to just, you know, for people watching and are not sure what exactly you're talking about. What is insurance premium?
Okay. Premium is a shilling cost to maintain a contract which is paid monthly. So
Okay.
it's a monthly payment in shilling
Yeah.
or in any other currency
Yeah.
to maintain the contract in force for the period that you've agreed to have this contract.
Okay.
So if I'm in a 1-year contract for, let's say, property insurance,
Yeah.
it's a premium, is the amount I have to pay in shillings per month to
Okay.
make sure that for that 1 year,
Yeah.
they maintain the contract that if anything happens to my property, they are going to pay back.
Okay.
So
And is that also the same for if you have to pay annually? It's still, you still use the word premium?
It could be paid monthly, it could be paid
Annually,
quarterly,
okay.
or biannually, or annually,
Okay.
every 12 months. Yeah.
And what is insurance excess?
Insurance excess is an amount which the insured would have to meet in terms of payment before the insurance company takes up the balance of payment for either repair or a replacement of an item that has been damaged or stolen.
Okay.
So it's a way of sharing the risk, so that again, you're involved in the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us an example?
So if I had an accident, I have my Vitz, and the bumper got knocked. The value of the vehicle maybe I've insured is 900,000. So the replacement or the repair costs comes to 200,000. So the insurance company will say, okay, for the first 5,000, you're going to pay. Okay, so then we will pay the balance 195,000. But in the event that the repair cost is a minor cost, 4,000 shillings, it falls within your excess, so you'd pay that amount. Okay, it's not a very punitive amount.
Okay.
And we're just sharing the risk. If it was a bigger risk, then we would take up
Okay.
the payment. Yeah.
Okay. And finally, this one term I keep hearing quite often. What
Okay.
is insurance fraud?
Well, insurance fraud is any form of misrepresentation where either you are claiming an item which was not yours. So people present receipts for things which were not theirs, and they claim they lost them. So you find somebody saying, I lost a Rolex, and they get some receipt from somebody, or there's an attempt to mislead the insurance company about the value or the item that you actually lost, which may not be yours, or the value is misrepresented, so that you get more than you actually lost in the event. So this is a very unfortunate situation, but people get creative. But again, it makes the insurance company very sensitive, because then you feel there are people who are trying to take advantage of your generosity as an insurance company, and then it makes the underwriting processes, we have to check and go through, and even the claims process very, very rigorous, just to make sure somebody is not misrepresenting their claim as such.
Yeah. Okay, I hear you. So when I was preparing for this, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and they had this question that I thought I have to ask Alex. And right after his daughter was born, she had complications. Maybe she's 2 days old or so, and he found it stunning that insurance wasn't going to cover the child. And it actually got me curious as to how soon can you have your child under your cover or covered by insurance?
Well, there's obviously waiting periods. When the child is just born, you'd probably be looking at about 3 months before they come into cover. But the waiting period will again be from company to company. But ordinarily you'd find it around about 3 months.
But why is that?
Why is that? Is because from understanding a risk, when a child is just born and you have not yet known fully what challenges they face, then you're taking a risk that you do not know. And remember, insurance tries to cover risks that are not foreseen but have been measured. You've tried to estimate, will it happen or not? Remember, insurance is also a business. You don't just take a risk that you are not very clear what it is about. So if you have a newborn baby, even the doctors probably know nothing about the baby, but you as the insurance company have stepped in. You kind of want to know what risk are you taking, because you do have measures you have to go through to take on any liability as a company.
So on average, you've got to wait about 3 months.
It will be around about 3 months.
Interesting. I mean, I wish, of course, as a parent myself, and hoping to one day have more children, I'd wish that it's from the onset, just so that you know they're covered from the beginning. But I do understand that it is a business on their side, and they have to take a second and see what they're getting into.
Yeah, it's from company to company. If you request your company that you'd like the baby to be covered, of course, the maternity cover would definitely require some, extra riders on it, just to make sure that they've really taken the full risk with clarity. They would probably put some details that a doctor would have had to give clearance and everything, that the child is very well. So unless something unknown happened at that point, they would take it on. But it would not be the first thing you do, because you're taking a risk which has not yet been identified correctly.
Right.
And just the same way that you as a parent would be concerned that your child is covered, is the same way that the insurance company is concerned that, listen, I have 10,000 other clients, for example, or 2,000. If I take on a risk which wipes out the reserves that we have, because maybe it's an illness that then costs, today you can see the cost of medical, you go into millions of shillings.
Yeah.
And you just took it on day one, then it's something that you just will have a lot of questions as to whether you really had thought about the other people as well. So you want to take proper measures to make sure that you have understood what kind of risk you're taking.
Yeah, I hear you. I understand, Alex. Now, can insurance sometimes differ between genders? Men and women maybe have different premiums.
Oh yeah.
Why is that?
Depends. If you look at general insurance, you find that on the whole, ladies' premiums would tend to be higher. They multitask.
Okay.
In fact, if you then moved into life insurance, you find that men's premiums tend to be higher. Men's premiums in life are higher.
Okay.
Women's premiums, especially in motor, not just anything else, but in motor, would tend to be higher. But in Kenya, it's not very, very established, that difference. It's really not. If you're dealing with countries like Europe, areas like Europe, I started my insurance in London. And quite frankly, the premium calculation is very, very
different,
precise upon men and women. You can see the difference.
And women is higher.
It would tend to be higher on driving, but if on ownership, it would tend to be cheaper from the ladies' side. So they are very clear distinguishing marks. But when it comes to life insurance, women's premiums are much, much cheaper than gentlemen's insurance.
Okay. Yeah. And isn't that feeding into stereotypes at all? Or are there statistics behind this?
Yes. Insurance is a fairly rigorous business.
Okay.
So what you have is things called mortality tables. So they've studied people over a long time. So there's this group of very smart guys called actuaries who do this assessment to tell which is the more risky category in this area. So they
Okay.
will do that. So there's a group of people called actuaries, and their
Right.
work is to really just do statistics to see which is the riskier category here.
Yeah.
Okay, younger males spot it and to get into a lot of aggressive things. So if they came for life insurance, you know you have to charge them more. So that
I hear you. I actually came across a really interesting story, and it was about this Canadian man who was trying to get car insurance, and I think it may be from the ownership perspective. And when he went to the insurance company, they said that it was going to come to about, say, 500,000 shillings or the equivalent of that. And then he realized that if he was a woman, it would have been at least 150,000 shillings cheaper. And he went to task trying to change his gender on paper. And he won, and he was able to get it for at least 150,000 shillings cheaper.
yes,
Which I thought was crazy. But I guess if the science is behind it and the statistics are behind this, then insurance companies will change it. But you said it's not so much the case in Kenya.
no. Kenya has not gotten to that point of distinguishing at that level, but more developed societies have really pushed that paper, and you will find that distinguished space. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, now I want to go back to health insurance, and specifically the topic of mental health. And I want to know from you, Alex, why is it that a lot of insurance companies don't really cover mental illness or mental health as part of medical insurance, especially in offices? If you've got a job and your company's covering your medical, for some reason it's just never really considered a real illness, and it's not paid for, it's not catered to. Why is that?
Let's start from the basics of insurance right there. When you're trying to assess whether you can cover a certain risk, there should be a way to measure it. There should be some way to measure that kind of risk and the consequences of it. When you then sit down and look at mental health, the impact of it is quite unknown in terms of how one behave and when can you distinguish between, for example, somebody's bipolar and the individual getting harmed because they were in a certain attack, or they're in. So that distinguishing element is very, very difficult, and being able to underwrite that space becomes very difficult. So in as much as possible, you find that the companies will walk away from what they can't tell precisely how to estimate the cost of, either the treatment. Is it going to be something that we can sort out at a certain period? How long is it going to take? The statistics may not exist to tell you how long you can deal with a certain issue.
Yeah.
So insurance wants statistics so that you are able to deal with the background and be able to estimate the cost.
Okay.
So in this case, then it's
Right.
not very possible.
But Alex, can't you at the very least offer, well, I'm saying you as if you represent all insurance companies,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I know you don't. But isn't there a way that they can at least offer, maybe start with 12 sessions of therapy or something like that, just the basics, and then say, like you were saying with the excess, work it out such that if there's anything more, then you take it on. But at least to start the process, because I think mental health is a conversation that's coming to the forefront, and rightly so, more and more. And it's something that's affecting a lot more people than they are willing to have conversations about, whether it's depression, whether it's eating disorders. And I just think that insurance companies surely should have, by now, some kind of statistics that allow for a little bit more room for claims to be.
I agree with you. It's something that at any time the insurance companies, insurance industry as a whole, should be able to walk in and measure. The space where that will happen is an evaluation at an industry level, where you look and see just how many cases exist. And I agree with you, because today it is becoming a very obvious fact that depression affects a lot of people, and you want to see how to cover that. So I think there will be the need for us to actually look into that, and I think I would like to pick up that by myself and also ask our industry partners just how well can we look into this issue and see whether it can be provided. And I do see a lot of people who've been affected by it, and I think this is a space that we can step into.
I thank you, Alex. I feel very passionately about this, and I hope that it is something that, you know, the next time you come on, it'll be a conversation of how this is something that's been taken on by a lot of insurance companies. And for now, before we move back into the conversation, I just want to give you a quick fact, and that is, according to research, the best day to buy your car insurance is 3 weeks before the renewal date. Is that true, Alex? Is that real?
It's an interesting sport. To sell your vehicle.
Yeah, no, to buy car insurance. The best time for you to buy your car insurance is 3 weeks before its renewal date. And I guess maybe they've done their statistics on this. And there's actually there's one theory too that I stand by, and that is, and I digress. I know I'm digressing right now, but that is the best time to buy your airline ticket, your plane ticket, is something like 2 months before your travel date, and specifically on a Tuesday at 3 p.m.
Really?
So I guess they've gone to work and given us these facts. But if your car insurance is about to expire, ladies and gentlemen, 3 weeks before is the time you want to go and try and renew that.
Yes, that may be also related to the fact that, you know, 1 week or fewer days towards renewal, then the whole process of being able to do your valuation is a lot more challenging and more expensive, because you know, by the time you get the valuers in and everybody in, it's costing you a lot of time. So indeed you need a bit more time and peace of mind to have done it, and the reminders come at least a month before you have to do the renewal. So it's quite on the spot.
Okay, now, and speaking of cars, technology is just changing so quickly. It's literally, you sleep and wake up and there's something new that's taken over the world. And we've been seeing a lot of driverless cars coming into the market. How is this going to affect insurance now that safety is becoming a lot more sophisticated? How is it going to affect insurance?
Well, on the whole, you'd obviously see that it should bring down premiums in the event that they have been able to establish that it's actually safer by a certain margin. So you would expect that the premiums would come down. And this is something that we expect to see. I think they're already testing this in Dubai. So we will be able to see just how safe they are in a real city. You know, Google has been piloting that as well. So we will be seeing some interesting changes around that space.
Yeah, it's really mind-boggling for me just to think of how different the world is going to be for our children. I know you've got 4 children, so it's going to be a completely different world when their children are here. Now, when our grandchildren are out.
Yes, I mean, when you think of when I was much younger, maybe the age of my kids, my youngest is 4, I didn't get behind the wheel of a real car or even a remotely real car. You know, we drove these things with ropes and, you know, a very interesting ramshackle. But today, you know, when we go out to all these nice race circuits, my children can actually drive. You know, which is amazing, because
GP
it's an automatic. It's an automatic. It's GP cutting, and I was there in Mombasa just last week, and my son was really pressing me down, and you know, I feel like a grandfather already. He was really chasing me down, but I can already tell, you know, the length of training he'll have had and the exposure on their video games and everything. They already have, you know, what it takes to actually just drive it. Maybe the height may be an issue and this kind of things, but Also, there are cars being developed with sensors and, GPS and all these things that can tell the car where to go, when to go, how.
Right.
This means that by their time, the issue of driving, I don't even know. I mean, you could just sit in the car and let it take you where you're going.
And it's going to be safe.
Yes.
Which I guess ultimately affects insurance and
Yes,
premiums.
so that whole technology and how reliable it is obviously something that is being checked now in terms of the consistency, and that should affect premiums going forward. Yeah.
And now, speaking of children, how important is life insurance? And I ask this because I know a lot of times people, and maybe right now you're watching this and thinking, life insurance, that's not for me. I'm, I don't know, in my 20s or in my 30s, I'm going to think about that later. But like we said earlier, we often think that tragedy or accidents isn't my thing to worry about, someone else's, but that's not the truth. And in fact, if you have people depending on you, I mean, really and truly, that's when you think about it. But maybe take us through life insurance and why it's so important that we have this conversation.
Well, I have to tell you that, if you're looking for freedom, first of all, even if we go back to the concept of a car, for you to have freedom to drive as fast as you can, like my friend Schumacher or, Sebastian Vettel, you have to have proper training. You cannot just drive fast without the skill to actually manage the vehicle. Even for vehicles, it's an issue about, how fast it can go is one issue, but how quick it can stop is the other issue. Now, when you come to insurance, if you're going to have a life that is full of freedom, that you're happy that, if I go for a party, whatever happens, there's all these tidbits that, you never know when life comes to an end. Am I going to live with my life with a side mirror, checking what's happening? In order to eliminate all the fear, you've got to have a proper foundation of your finances. The legacy you're looking at forward, because everybody has a vision, just the same way any company has a vision. You have a vision. Now that vision can be cut short by not providing for that future. Okay, so you want to have your Nyla have a good future. Now, in the event that you don't provide for that future, and today we believe that you'll live to 120, at least what the Bible is telling us now.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Amen.
So if that changes and you had dreams of, showing up at Nyla's wedding and giving her, this beach property, and that's your dream or a business, and then it didn't happen because you suddenly find yourself bedridden, you're ill, and you're told, listen, you will not make it past, 60 or 70. Then that kills your dream. You feel, what was my life worth? But to ensure that it will happen, and despite my challenges, I will still go through it, I am happy, is that I have life insurance. So, for example, I have whole life insurance, or I have education insurance, so my child's education will be paid whether I'm there or not. If I'm unable to take care of myself because of an illness, I will still be covered. They will take care of me. I don't need people worrying on me. Yeah, I will get some payments coming through to maintain me, to, I can be taken to a nice golf club and watch guys play. I may not play, but I can still watch. Yeah, I must. So all these things are made possible by having the right foundation. And the right foundation is your partner, a good insurance company giving you a good life insurance cover, which says in the event of death, illness, I know they're the things you don't want to talk about, but they're the things you want to clear off the table first. Then when you want to go and have fun, you're having fun without this side mirror of, oh my God, this can happen.
Yeah.
So the insurance, life insurance especially, can give you different structures. You can have a term insurance where you say, okay, I don't know what will happen for the next 10 years because I'm still sorting myself out, and I want the cheapest insurance just to make sure if something happens, we are covered. So you take the simplest form. You take a term insurance. This means that in the next 10 years, if something happens to you, hey, we're going to pay you this amount, which can be left to your beneficiaries, and that's your children, your parents, or somebody.
Yeah.
And then you can think, hey, that's not good enough for me. I want to have something that the rest of my life, whenever it happens to me, something will be paid out to my beneficiaries. So you've kind of taken care of them. So you go for a whole life insurance policy. So no matter how long you live, if something happens in between, you're like, we are good. Okay,
You're covered.
There's something, I got this covered.
Yeah.
Now, if you even say, oh, enough, some people say, this thing, then when I die, why will guys have fun when I die? I want to have fun when I'm alive. Sure thing. Get an endowment policy, whatever you call universal policies. This will give you both the benefit that if something happens in between now in the next 10, 20, 20, 30 years, we are going to pay you and your beneficiaries. But if nothing happens within the next 10, 15 years, we'll pay you back what you've invested. So, you can actually play about with it and have all these things in place.
Interesting.
So you've covered the bases. So now when you're working, you're in your hustle, you're doing your style thing, you're doing your biashara here and there, you know that base is covered. And that's why I was saying, you'd want to ask a guy, just how sorted are you? Because, we can enjoy over here and then there's a few problems.
Next minute, you're
so
crying. And
this is just to cover the base. And from there you have the freedom to do what you want.
Right.
Yeah.
I hear you. You touched on so many things there. The first being that I want to touch on, that we have, the sense of Harambes, which is great. Harambes is great, and it's what makes Kenya what it is. There's this sense of community, and we've got each other's back. But more often than not, that's what you assume is going to happen, and that people will rally behind your children or the loved ones that you left behind and support them. But people move on with their lives, and they get to working, and they get consumed by their own issues. And another thing you touched on is, education, and that's one of those things for our children. We want to ensure that they have the best education, just so that they have the chance to go out there and live their best lives, and the fact that life insurance covers all these things, that they know that they will be taken care of whether or not you're around, to me is what makes it seem like it's a non-conversation. I don't even know why we're talking about it, and yet I'm sure statistics show that a lot of Kenyans don't have life insurance.
Yeah. The penetration is what we are talking about. We talk about the insurance penetration. Obviously, life insurance penetration, 5%. But general insurance will be higher, as I said, because of the law. People are aware of it. Every cop stops you and, you are like...
start to shake. Oh,
officer,
gosh.
I forgot something. So there's a guy to remind you.
Yeah.
But the one that you're not reminded about, this life insurance business, is probably what's more critical. Because it's more impactful. When you do the value of an individual's life, what can you give it? You really just can't. So, there are policies to help you with these shocks. For example, I will be attending a funeral tomorrow, and
Sorry.
we have a situation where at least the premiums that were being paid by the family pay out immediately to cover the coffin, to cover the this. So all these things you have to pull people in for Harambes. There are ways to take care of them, and all these insurance companies will give it to you for practically nearly 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings, and at 5,000 shillings you have a glorious send-off. So there are these mechanisms, but thanks to you, obviously people get to hear about it, and others who do that.
Right.
But I think guys just fear, discussing this life topic.
No one wants, you try and start that conversation with your parents or your loved ones, and it's like, what are you trying to say? What's going on? And no one wants to talk about their demise. And yet, everyone on this earth is going to leave at some point.
Yeah.
So it's important that we have more of these conversations. But now, say for instance, I did take out life insurance, or at least I wanted to take it out. But I think sometimes the idea of life insurance just sounds like, we're talking about a $10 million claim, and it just feels like what you're paying as your monthly premium is something like, I don't know, like 100,000 shillings a month. So if that was not anywhere near what my lifestyle or my financial state was, can you give us an approximate amount as to how low it can start from, so that if you're watching this and you're like, I have just started my job, I really don't have that much to start thinking about putting into insurance, where can we start?
You can start paying life insurance premiums from as low as 500 shillings, 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings is really what you can afford. And
500 shillings a month.
Yeah.
And yet,
Yeah.
why does it feel like it's this big, great secret club for the rich and famous?
It's okay. There is this space where everybody wants to talk about a very comfortable life, where everybody wants to talk about these millionaire, billionaire things.
Okay.
Which I find, yes, it's a good aspiration, but I always say start where you are, because the starting point is not the biggest challenge. The challenge will be that you have the right habit to get you to success. So people start in different spaces. There are those who can start up, there are those who can start down. I accept I cannot always start at the top of the tree. You can start at the bottom.
I mean, we all started from crawling and we work our way up.
Yes, so you are allowed to have flexible premiums. So I can start at 500. Then 2 years later, my income is so much better. I say, okay, I'll keep the 500 one running, but can I now do another one for 1,000 shillings? And then a few years later, I am doing one for 10,000 shillings.
Right.
So I've always had this habit of doing the right thing since the beginning. It's the habit which is the challenge. So doesn't matter where you start, form the right habit and success will find you. You don't need to go looking for success. That's what I say.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us the past hour, and thank you guys too for sitting in with us for the past hour and learning as much as I did about insurance, which is something I didn't know I'd even know as much as we've learned and taken from this conversation for the past hour. I will be sure to ask Alex one more question, which I'm going to give you a teaser right now. It has to do with all these models and celebrities who insure their legs. What is that about? But I'm going to ask him on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So if you want to see what he has to say about that, make sure you're following us on Living with S. We will be back tomorrow bright and early, 8 a.m. talking about love and relationships, because that's what we do on Wednesday. We try and create a strong foundation so that we know how to navigate relationships. See you tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp.